What's going on, everybody? Just Haley here, and I am back again once again with another video, and you already know who it's for. This one is for Mirage. Now, I love Mirage. I loved her for a very long time. She's my most played Warframe by far, and if you include the Prime and the regular, she's up at about 17% playtime compared to most other Warframes that I think are barely eclipsing 8 at the next highest, and it falls off really rapidly from there. I love Mirage. She's so much fun, and she really embodies what I love in a Warframe, which is the ability to pick up any weapon, any pet, any setup, and just really go into any mission and thrive. It allows for a lot of variety, but what I'm going to be showing you guys today is a very specific build that I started running because of a recent change that they made to damage reduction from abilities now applying to shields. It's a really strong combination, especially if you pair it with something like, as you can see in the gameplay, Secondary Fortifier. Add all of that into Eclipse and then her clones from the Hall of Mirrors. It is absolutely insane. If you really want to annoy your friends or annoy any of the people that you squad up with, you can go a little bit more try-hard and clear the map of any possible kills that they could have. It's really funny. It'll frustrate people. Don't do it too often, but it is pretty funny if you ever wanted to make people zero out. It's something you could do. I love this build a lot. What we're going to be actually using today is the Mirage, the Epitaph, the Corufell, the Ogress, and the Adarza Kavat. Now the Kavat you could absolutely change into anything that you want it to be. I run with the Adarza Kavat just to showcase that you really don't need that much from your pet. It's offering a little bit of crit chance from time to time, but it's just a cycle of crit chance for that. Absolutely not something that Mirage needs, but when you do get the Epitaph AoE critting a bunch, it is slightly helpful, and it does provides for some really fun and just kind of beautiful screens of damage. So we're going to go right into the build. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the Subsume. What I subsumed onto her is, again, looking for that damage reduction, Null Star. Now, Null Star is an absolutely insane ability now, and I love it on so many frames that I used to leave behind because they felt a little bit too squishy, a little bit too inconsistent with their damage reduction unless you went pure shield gating. If you guys have been paying attention or you guys catch the streams, I don't usually like pure shield gating. It's a little bit too active of a playstyle to try to remember to be defensive. I prefer it to be done for me, so now we can combine this with our Arcane Aegis to make sure that our shields are constantly coming back, and combine that all with Secondary Fortifier to get even more tankiness on top of that, which really makes you relatively untouchable for the most part in just about any type of content, especially as enemies get harder. It's usually by adding Eximus, and your Fortifier is going to shred through those and give you a defensive layer as well. It's very strong. The other thing that we're doing with Null Star is we are nuking our range all the way down to 34%. That min is going to allow us to keep those Null Stars on as long as we keep enemies a little bit at a distance. We can recast it now whenever we want, which is another awesome change that they made back with Kome dropping and the Nova rework. Really cool. It keeps our damage reduction up at that 75%. You combine that with a ton of shields from a primed redirection, some Aegis in there as well, and you can do really fun things with this and absolutely not have to worry about your survivability because Aegis, Brief Respite, and everything else are going to really capitalize. So let's, I talked about the mods, let's go right into the build and I'll show you guys what it looks like. So the main goal with this build is to try to stay alive with as little effort as possible, and we're doing that with a combination of Brief Respite, Adaptation, and Aegis. Arcane Aegis is an incredibly strong arcane, especially when you synergize it with some damage reduction abilities such as Null Star. Works very well, and then using Prime Redirection to give us not only more shields but also more shield regeneration rate, which again synergizes really well with Arcane Aegis for this build. If you don't have Prime Redirection, or if you're not looking to run that, you could run Rolling Guard instead. I just preferred the extra shields that you could get and the extra shield recharge rate. It is pretty nice. Now the other thing that you're going to be looking at is Primed Continuity, Narrow-Minded. That's going to be our main source of duration. Higher duration means fewer abilities cast. I like not having to worry about those. It's really nice, really easy for my hands, stuff like that, something you guys already know. Now we do have Blind Rage and Transient Fortitude coming in for a ton of strength, synergizing that with Mult Augmented, and then our 3 Tau Forged Strength Shards. This is to get us to 343% strength, which then Mult Augmented will take us all the way to 400. That's for the Pillage build that I know a lot of people like. Pretty much the same setup here. except you run Pillage instead of Nullstar. I just did that because it allows you to get to a full strip with Pillage just at that 400% strength. So you could drop these 3 Talforged Reds if you wanted to, maybe run with some parkour velocity or whatever you wanted to do just for simplicity's sake, just for whatever utility you feel like you're missing. And then Total Eclipse is going to give our clones some extra damage. It also synergizes really well with Sentinels, since Sentinels are always sitting over top of your shoulder and they do a lot of damage now. So if you are interested in that, that's absolutely an option for you. I do recommend 1 shard for an equilibrium effect, just to help with energy, because we're not running flow or any other way to keep our energy up in this. And then I do like 1 cast speed shard whenever I'm running Eclipse. Eclipse is just a little bit too long for my typical taste in casts, as well as Hall of Mirrors takes a little bit too long to cast as well, so anything to speed that up is always going to feel really, really nice, so that's why that yellow shard is there. I've tried a lot of combinations over the years, trying to get Mirage to be really as tanky as possible without having to put a ton of effort into it. My old way of doing that used to be running Vazarin Dash, but when they changed that to Void Slings, it became way less smooth, so I stopped using it as much. It's just not as much fun, it's not as good, it's not as consistent, and I don't like doing it as much, so my typical taste for that is always going to be trying to shift towards less effort, and the Nullstar combination with Aegis is just the epitome of less effort. It kind of does your shield gating for you, and I really, really like that. You've seen here that my shields have been taken down sometimes. That's always going to be an easy solution, just to cast your Nullstar again. Whenever you cast it, you're going to get a chunk of shields back, which is then going to allow you to potentially block your Aegis during that shield damage. It's really, really nice. If you wanted to shift anything, the most things that you could shift would be things like maybe adding in an Augur mod for like Augur Secrets instead of Transient Fortitude would give you more shields back when you cast. Like I said, the Rolling Guard over that redirection would be a decent way to get a little bit of invulnerability if you don't want to combine it with Fortifier. And the other things for that are mostly going to be a little bit suboptimal, so I don't really want to recommend anything else here. The only other thing I might say is Barrier instead of Augmented could be another way to get your shields back immediately if you wanted to. It's not going to be required for any of the content that you're doing, but it is really nice. Now I do want to talk about weapons, so I will mention that I'm currently using the Corufell. With the Corufell, just like with any Gunblade and Mirage, you get the benefit of being able to have 4 extra attacks, so 5 projectiles at a time, instead of just the 3 that you would normally have with regular guns from Mirage. So that's a really, really cool feature of that. The other thing that you have with the Corufell is the ability to do a little bit of attack that you've seen a couple times already, but essentially with Mirage specifically, the Corufell allows you to shoot with the Corufell, pause for just a second, let another set of projectiles come out from the clones, and then shoot again. So essentially the clones will shoot twice per time that you shoot, as long as you put just a little bit of a pause in between your shots. Not too long, or you'll have to do that big wind up again, and it won't do it. So you'll see it a few times throughout the gameplay here that I'm doing. It's a really, really cool thing. It'll actually end up sending, instead of just the 5 and then 10, you'll get the 5, then 4, 9, and then 5, then 4, another 9, so 18 instead. The clones won't shoot as hard as Mirage does, they won't hit as hard as Mirage does, so it is just a little bit of a slower process, just slightly, but you are getting 8 more projectiles from the clones out of it. I think it's worth it sometimes, depends on what you're fighting. Things like the Apex tank and stuff like that, it was really, really cool with. It actually ended up shredding through that thing's health super easily. Aside from that, the build for the Corufell, I am using melee exposure. I don't use that supremely well on Mirage because I don't cast things that often, so kind of swap that with what you want. I don't recommend things like Animosity or anything like that because you're not really able to use the melee attack too often, but if you wanted to swap it, you absolutely could. Pick your favorite melee arcane. I think exposure is just a nice little bit of damage from time to time. Not something we're focusing on at all with this build. You could also go crescendo if you're more willing than I am to get finisher kills in the beginning. It'll absolutely stack up well and make this build absolutely crazy as the game continues to go on. From there, we have the Epitaph that I'm using. I love the Epitaph. It's one of my favorite secondaries in the game, especially when you combine it with things like secondary fortifier. As missions progress, there's more and more Eximus. You can absolutely shred through things with that fortifier. The extra overguard damage is really good. Puts on crazy heat procs. You give it a little bit of viral, you give it tons of AoE. It's going to go through walls, as you can see in a lot of this. It's going absolutely crazy through walls. You're also getting the extra projectiles from the clones with Mirage, which is always really cool. So you're getting so much value out of the Epitaph on missions like the Vitus Essence farm and stuff like that. If you're doing arbitrations, it's crazy on that because those enemies are a little bit lower level. You're going to shred through them for a very long time, to the point that it makes it very difficult for your teammates to get kills. Use that information with responsibility. Please use it responsibly, because it can be so frustrating for some teammates when they feel like they're not doing anything. They'll just leave. It can feel a little bit bad. The other little like hidden secret thing is the Vertilac. If you've ever wondered what it was like to play Warframe while spinning inside of a dryer, stick around till the end of the video. However, PSA, if you are photosensitive, I do not recommend, but it will be there for you guys if you so choose to watch. Another one of my favorite weapons with her is the Ogress. I love the Ogress. I think it's really cool. More projectiles with that always makes it do really cool things. So being able to do that with Mirage just makes sense. It's a really, really good synergy, and it allows her to spread the Nightwatch Napalm all over the map. I use that one a lot too with her, but really any Gunblade, any melee influence, the Epitaph, AoE weapons are always going to be good. The Brahma was the old thing that I used to use all the time, and it's still fantastic on her. The Nadaruk is always a good option. Any weapon just gets better with Mirage in the same way that any melee weapon just gets better with Varuna. I love her for that, and she is still one of my favorite frames because of that. Aside from that, guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. If you guys liked the video, remember to like, comment, subscribe. Make sure the bell's turned on for notifications so you guys can get notified when we upload. I'm going to be trying to get out some more videos for you guys. I have a bunch of stuff in the pipe that gameplay is recorded, and I'm really excited about. A lot of new synergies and stuff with things like Nullstar for the damage reduction that allows it to be crazy for frames that used to just rely on pillage. Now have a new option with some different build variations that you can do, a variety of options there. Really, really fun to experiment with. I have a lot of weapons and stuff that I'm just kind of building into the frames and trying to make sure we diversify with that. If you guys ever have requests, please leave them in the comments and I will get to them as soon as I can. If you guys have other questions and stuff like that, always check to see if we're live on Twitch. I do try to keep a pretty consistent schedule when I can. Sometimes health gets in the way, so I do apologize for that in advance. But thank you guys so much for watching. I am putting a clip at the end of this video as well. If you are photosensitive, do not watch it. It's a PSA. It is a ton of screen shake. It can make you very nauseous, or at least it has with people on stream, as well as myself. Be careful, and it is the reason that I always recommend keeping your screen shake off, because a rogue Mirage with a Vertilac could be coming to a mission near you. Thanks so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and remember that I love your faces. Bye!